What's up, guys? It's Matt from the Rusty Raptor Prop Shop. Today we are outside and we're making a mess. So stick around. God, bad decision. Alright guys, so if you checked out last week's video, you saw us make this awesome angel blade. It's melting into the ground. Now we have to do some finishing work on it because we still have an awful large base here and it doesn't look too melty at this point. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually work on getting this base flattened out and then getting some design in here so you can actually see what it fully looks like. Now, what we're going to start out by doing, this bottom of this base right here, right now, is actually very, very curved, so the thing is actually sitting kind of lopsided. We want it to look more like it's melting into the ground, so we're going to flatten that out with a sander, and then we're going to come back in here, and we're going to make some grooves in here that make it actually look like it's more melting in the ground, rather than just kind of sitting in a circle that we put on the ground there. So we're going to give it a little bit of more texture, some melty parts, some angles like this. Some of these drawn on here a little bit just to get an idea of what we're shooting for. All right. All right, now that once we get this actually sanded on the bottom here, we'll come back with our Dremel tool, we'll cut these shapes out, and hopefully we'll get more of a melty look rather than that. So what we're gonna do first, we're gonna get our belt sander out here. This is not exactly what you'd use a belt sander for usually, but we're gonna try something a little different. Get our respirator on. We're using a RZ mask. These are the best masks I can find. I love these things. If you get a chance, go to the store, pick one up. You can check one on the website. We'll put a link in the description below. These are awesome. We'll put some goggles on, headgear just so we can hear later on. All right guys, so now that we have our base kind of flattened out a little bit here, so it's actually kind of flush against the table, we want to go in here on our actual top part here and kind of carve out some areas to make it look a little more melted rather than just a big round circle. So what we've done is we actually put a few lines on here to make a kind of a pattern we're going to shoot for. Put a little extra stuff in here every once in a while. And then we're going to take our Dremel tool. We're going to try to go in here, we're going to curve some of these out and kind of make it a little more flush to the ground. We're going to get our respirator back on. Some eye protection on. Let's see if we can get this right. All right, so we've got all the work done with our Dremel so far. We've got a nice start here of some edges to make it look a little more melted. The problem we're having though is that we have this rounded kind of thick edge on all these corners. So when you put it on the table, it gives it more of a cartoony look, kind of like spilled milk, rather than a nice angel blade that's melted into the ground. So what we want to do is we want to feather the middle down to the sides. So we want to start in the middle here. We're going to feather this edge all the way down till we get almost paper thin edges here, so it actually does look like it's melting out. Once we do that, we'll smooth it back out, we'll spray some filler primer on there, and we'll actually get a coat of silver on here and see if we can get it to look like an actual angel blade. So let's go over to the sander and see if we can get that done. All right, so we got it off our belt sander here. We've got a nice feathered edge on all these corners here, so it sits nice and flat on the table. Has a very nice look to it. But now we have some sand lines in here we need to get out of the actual resin. So we're gonna use a piece of hand paper here. We're gonna go in here, we're just gonna sand these edges out, kind of get them nice and flush. Now, when we put the primer on here, it is gonna help smooth it out a little more, but by sanding it beforehand, we won't have as much work to do after we put the primer on there. We also ended up with some edges here that have some stringing on them. I'm just gonna run the sandpaper across those real softly like that right there, get that stringing off there, just so the primer doesn't stick to it and we don't have as much work to do later. We're gonna sand this down with our hand, and then we'll show you when we start priming it. All right, so now we're gonna take this Angel Blade here. We're gonna put a couple coats of filler primer on it real fast just to get some of the lines smoothed out so we can start painting the actual silver on there. Now you're gonna wanna put this on super heavy. What this does is it actually runs into spots that needs filler. It's gonna fill those areas up and make it a smooth area for you so you can sand it again a little bit and make it even smoother. So the thicker you spray this on, the more coverage it's going to have on there and the more it's going to fill in spots that you may have missed during sanding. Now the advantage with this is, since we're actually wanting this to look like it's running, it doesn't matter how much of this I spray on here, even if the paint starts to run, it's just going to add the actual effect itself. So I'm not too overly worried about that. So I'm probably going to put a lot more on here than I should. And actually, I'm going to let it run a little bit. All right, we'll give that a little while to dry since it's pretty thick on there. We might have to give it much. I think you can usually wet sand this stuff in about 15 minutes. We're going to have to give it much more time than that. But if it dries, we'll come back and give it a little wet sand just to smooth it out a little bit. We'll spray some silver on there and we should be done. All right, guys, thanks for hanging out with us on our build today. I hope you liked this Angel Blade as much as we did. It's been about a day now. We went back, we distressed it a little more now that it's dried. You can kind of look at the crustiness of it there. It makes it look a little nastier and a little older. If you want to try one of these yourself, check out rustyraptor.com. Use the code word Impala in the store for 50% off any Angel Blade purchase. You can also check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/therustyraptor. You can get connected with us and let us know what you want to see coming up in the future. Make sure you click subscribe down below so you catch all of our upcoming videos, and we'll see you next week.